Something that deserves to be talked about a lot, though. And with that, I kind of want to get started. Bryce, you've been on the program a few times. I think truck parking, I think we've talked about misclassification and a couple of other issues. On truck parking, though, can you give us, and I want to start nationally and kind of bring it, narrow it to, more local issues that we see, but nationally, Bryce, and when I say that, I mean in D.C. and Congress, where does truck parking stand? I know there is no dedicated truck parking money, but where did that start, and where is it at now?
Yeah, so kind of taking a real big picture and going back a few years, you have Jason's Law, which was enacted and required the Jason's Law report, which took a national inventory of truck parking. And that report from 2014 showed that there is a shortage of truck parking across the country. And more recently, in 2019, they released an updated version of that report. And that showed, unsurprisingly, that there is still a shortage of truck parking in every state, every region of the country. And in fact, some states have fewer public truck parking spaces than they did when they did the first survey. And they also found that the nation's truck parking capacity has not kept pace with the growth in truck vehicle miles traveled. So just very broadly speaking, there's a shortage of truck parking. It's getting worse. And even though right now states can use federal funding to expand truck parking capacity and build out more truck parking spaces, very few have done so. And so that leads us to what you just mentioned is we've been fighting to try and secure dedicated truck parking in any highway bill or infrastructure bill. We have our standalone legislation, H.R. 2187, the Truck Parking Safety Improvement Act. And basically what that legislation would do, set aside funding for a competitive grant program, and that funding would be used exclusively for building out truck parking capacity. So unfortunately, it hasn't quite gotten over the finish line yet. We've been trying to, like I said, get that in any bill that is moving here in Congress. On the bright side, we do have bipartisan support for this legislation. We have bipartisan co-sponsors who've introduced the bill. That's over in the House. And then over on the Senate more recently, we had a bipartisan duo of senators try and get an amendment included in the infrastructure bill to address truck parking. So we've made some good headway. We've definitely raised the profile of the issue. We've heard about it talked in about more context as well, and we can probably talk about it a little bit later. Even as supply chain issues with supply chains are being talked about, we're talking about it with that as well. But kind of where it stands now is we've made a lot of progress, but we know that the work isn't done on it. We're still trying to see if we can get over the finish line.
So, what's the chances that this would would cross the finish line, or some sort of dedicated funding for truck parking would be signed into law this year or next year in 2022?
Yeah, frustratingly, the chances are pretty low right now. Our best opportunity was to get this included in the bipartisan infrastructure bill. We got pretty close over in the Senate side, but it just didn't make it into the final package. And so, this specific bill, this specific route doesn't look too likely at this moment. But with that said, that doesn't mean we're going to stop trying to get it included in this legislation, or that doesn't mean we're going to stop trying to raise the profile of the issue and see if there's not ways that funding that's already out there can be used for truck parking. Like I said, there's federal programs right now where this can be used, and if Congress does in fact pass an infrastructure bill, putting billions of new dollars of infrastructure investment in place, we're going to make the argument that this is something that needs to be addressed. So, unfortunately, not as likely as we'd like but there's still opportunities to expand parking capacity and get some funding for it.
Lewie, you were on the road for 23 years. You know that parking is bad or non-existent in some parts of the country. Most people listening to this, whether live or on that might be recording it or listening to it on YouTube later, probably are people that spend time out on the road. They've struggled with parking as well. So we don't need to debate that. But I guess what's your reaction to what Bryce said about what is being done in D.C. or not being done in terms of dedicated money for truck parking?
Well, I think it's very disappointing on what's not being done. Everybody knows it's an issue. When we talk to a lot of these legislative folks on Capitol Hill, they know it's an issue. They go home from Washington once in a while. They go on vacations with their family. They go places. They see the trucks after dark, lined up on the ramps, and the rest areas overflowing, or lined up on the ramps at the truck stops or wherever. They've admitted they've seen it. I mean, this is pretty much a bipartisan thing. There's really only one organization I know of that's even against it.
That's a good point.
Which is really unheard of in Washington, D.C. But, we have this thing that's bipartisan. Everybody knows it's a problem. FMCSA knows it's a problem. CVSA knows it's a problem. DOT, all the people in our elected officials, everybody admits that this is a problem. It's a tragedy, but again, nobody wants to do anything about it, and which is crazy to me again, because there's only one group that I know of that's against it, and they can't fix it no matter how bad they think. And like this bill that we brought up, this HR 2187, they could even be a part of that if they wanted to be. It gives them opportunity. But with that being said, I'm also disappointed that when I look on the website for this 2187 bill on a congressional website, I don't even know if there's 20 congressmen that's been co-sponsoring this. Do you know, Bryce, how many people are co-sponsoring it this time?
We're at 25 right now.
We're at 25, and I get it. I was a trucker. I know as a trucker we like to complain and moan and groan about our problems, and I did it. We all do it. But we got to pick up the phone, guys. You should be calling your congressman and saying, why aren't you co-sponsoring HR 2187? You get your name on there. I know I got my congressman on there because I called him, and I know you got, you guys can talk on the phone and pick up your phone, but pick up your phone. It takes 2 minutes to call in there. Get their transportation, guys. I say this all the time. If we had 300 or 400 congressmen co-sponsoring it, I believe this would probably pass, or people would start talking about it. So it's kind of on us too.
How's that?
Because we're not doing our grassroots due diligence, and I'm probably making some members mad or truckers mad, but it's the truth. We got these problems.
Okay.
We need to pick up the phone. We need to get involved. That's how you change these things. That's how this stuff. That's why all this crap gets dumped on you guys, and all these stupid rules and all these stupid regulations, because the people that are against you drivers, they're picking up the phone. They're having the meetings. They're talking to their elected officials. And correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, you worked in a
wasn't sure that you were going to.
I don't like to admit that.
I didn't know you were going
so.
to be here, so I spent all morning studying
It's
PD.
no big deal for a congressman to co-sponsor a bill, especially something about. Is it? I mean, that's a pretty easy.
It's
thing.
a relatively easy ask. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. So,
I probably won't read it. It just helped to write it out.
Thing we
and
have
get
to
my
keep in
mindset
mind,
right. Yeah.
We know that our elected
Only thing I really could
officials
think
that we
of
don't
is
vote for don't
where it
really
says,
care
"Are there any
about our
questions that
opinion.
people should ask that
So
they
with
may
that,
not?"
especially on state levels, you need to keep
Yeah.
in mind, even though you
Other
don't
than
have a
that.
parking problem around your home, that's where you need to be trying to fix parking. Just like I lived in Ohio, they closed the rest area 25 miles
Well, is
from
there
my
anything
house. I went to Columbus
when you're
and
working
had
a
all these
claim with them where
meetings and
they
tried
say-
and failed.
I didn't know I didn't have that coverage.
Not because I needed those spots, because my brother truckers from other states needed those spots.
I had one
That's how we're going to get parking around the country. Is we as truckers have to start going to these public meetings, getting a hold of our state reps.
And Ken, I wanted to go back to, the contract rates versus spot rates. So in essence, and I'm just kind of making up numbers here, but in early 2020, if you had contract rates, looking a year out,
30 seconds. Barry is the best.
I'm just going to make $2 a mile or whatever it might be. However
30
you
seconds
calculate that.
Leading
when
into
that
the
market,
break,
when the market jumped
you'll hear,
up,
like,
right,
some
and
music
rates
start,
shot
and
up,
it's kind of like your key to
you guys, as a brokerage, probably lost. Right, it's the spot market's paying $3 a mile, and you guys had already locked in a commitment.
We may
for
not.
$2.
I don't know.
I mean, that's essentially what happened last year, correct? Or is there another way to explain it?
Yes. Absolutely, and then it becomes a strain on the relationship with the shipping. As to coming back, hey, we can weather that for a while, but not for an entire quarter or 6 months out of the year. So eventually you have to go back and renegotiate that, really on behalf of the carriers that you're working with. And at that time, a lot of the carriers we work with long term, or had been working with us for on a specific lane, is where they helped out a lot as well. But we had each of our offices has its own accounting, their own P&L, and we had offices completely upside down during that time. And like I said, it was an interesting time to manage.
Barry, did Mark get a new monitor?
At the same time, the drivers,
like, it looks different.
They didn't. They
it's
couldn't
different.
Get into
they just brought it in today. Tim is not. Tim's not real happy with it because it looks a little bit blurry.
At all.
Yeah.
And I guess one of the silver linings.
If you need to know what something says, ask
realized,
Jennifer. She's looking at the same thing you are right in front of her, and that monitor is clear.
How important the drivers are. How important, all those involved in the supply chain, those that are loading the trucks and unloading the trucks, how important they are, because they saw empty shelves.
Yeah, absolutely. And what do things, we just took a step back, right, to May, June of 2020. What have things been like since then for you guys, right? So that was a very challenging few months or even the year. Certainly drivers out on the road just had a heck of a time dealing with everything. Like you said, couldn't find a place to eat. The restaurants at truck stops were closed. You can't drive a big truck through a drive-through. It just doesn't work that way. There were a lot of restaurants, and the food industry did step up in some ways. And I think we've seen permanent changes from that with how you can, order via apps and things like that. But what do things look like for you guys now? Right, you've kind of weathered that storm last year. What's the outlook of 2021 and even going forward into 2022?
Well, we see the rates staying up, and I got to be careful because my crystal ball shattered through this whole thing as to predicting. But we just see the rates staying up. I think June we kind of probably hit about the highest level, and now this is at an industry, not just Allen Lund Company. And they've stayed up there. We've been able to work with our shippers, those that do contract rates, to readjust those contracts, and we did see a shift more to spot rates, out there, and some adjusting now. The fuel prices going up. We should mention that's been a strain on both sides of the equation. So I just don't see anything that's going to bring down the prices too much, because even if the demand slows down, there's still a big replenishment of it seems all the inventories that are low. I ordered a saw not too long ago, and it was a 46-week wait for that. So it's pretty interesting to where everybody's having to deal with the supply chain shortages and the stress. And it's not just the ships out in Long Beach and LA. It's all throughout the system.
Hey, you mentioned fuel. I got a question. Are you Are you guys getting some fuel surcharge off your shippers, or do you guys get it? And I'm assuming since you're a good, reputable company, you're passing all that fuel money on to the trucks?
Yes. Now I should say too, Dad was a trucker. He drove heavy construction equipment, and then drove on the weekends at times with his dad. So if we ever spoke poorly or treated any truckers or drivers poorly, boy, you got the wrath a little bit from Dad, and he's the one who taught us too that carriers and truckers are customers too, every bit as much as our shipping customers. And so yes, we certainly with the spot rate that passes through. You don't have a fuel surcharge, but we work fuel surcharge rates into all of the contracts so that they adjust the rates adjust up for those.
And are your shippers, are they being pretty decent about fuel? I mean, because fuel, I think I heard yesterday or this morning, that's up 40% from a year ago at this time on the news. So are they being pretty good about it, or are you getting some pushback, or what's the trend out there right now? I guess would be the proper term.
They're aware of fuel prices too everywhere. They all drive to work, or hopefully they're working at the offices now. They're not as many working from home, but they know what that is, and they also know now. They're trying to find just trucks, and they're not talking as much about the price. It's just we've got to get our product moved. So I would say there's been a good education kind of everybody as to how important transportation is, and how much goes by trucking. Even if it goes on rail, there's a truck picking it up or dropping it off at the ramps. So I think there's just a much better appreciation, and that translates into appreciating them by accepting the higher rates and the higher fuel surcharges.
Ken, we had Ann Rinke on. She's the president and CEO of the Transportation Intermediaries Association. Not the last show, but the show before that, so about a month ago. And she's great. I knew of Ann when I was in D.C. I didn't know her well, and she didn't know me well, but we knew of each other. And I think she did a great job, right? She answered a lot of questions. We had some follow-up with her, and I'm not trying to jump around, but we've since had some follow-up with her, and she fielded some tough questions. But we had a great conversation afterwards. And one of the issues that inevitably comes up, right, and this was a big thing last year, certainly something you heard about, is this transparency requirement, right? The regulations, in theory, if a carrier requests certain information from the broker's supposed to provide it. And I know this is something you're very familiar with, but that was one of the things we discussed with Ann. And as I'm sure that Alan Lund is a member of TIA. Well, at least I know you guys are. So what's your take or your perspective on the transparency regulations? And I ask that because I think you told me the other day that you've only had like 2 people ever request that information from you guys like in forever. So is that, what's your perspective on that stuff?
Yeah, so we've, as a company, we've said we'll give that information, but you got to call in and talk to me. Actually, all those calls are routed to me, and we'll give that information out. And the reason why we want that, kind of to go through me is that I can explain a little bit behind it, because I might be giving you information and I don't know if the carrier will believe that, hey, maybe they were paid $2,400 and we only received $2,000. Well, if you got that information, you'd probably just call me a liar. But if I can give some context to that about it being in a contract, and the same thing too, we may have been paid $3,000 and paid the carrier $2,400, but it might be on a contract where it's seasonal and we're losing money some months and making a little bit more money other months. So there has to be kind of an understanding in that context. I can tell you right now, our margins are down from our normal times. So the carriers are doing a little bit better And I think that goes for most brokers. But I think it's good to understand that we're up against the market. Dad would say nobody's bigger than the market out there, and we're in that area and taking huge risk at times, as well.
I got
we like to. Yeah.
Go ahead. Finish your thought.
Okay, we like the fact that there's more owner-operators out there than have ever been before. We have set up recently record-breaking numbers of new trucking companies coming in to be set up with our company to be able to handle loads. So we've seen an increase through this, and that's because rates are up. It's hard to tell exactly how much because it depends on the lanes and stuff. But some say as much as 40% in the last probably 18 months, and so that goes right to the drivers if they're owner-operator.
We are with Ann Rinke, President and CEO of TIA, and Dale Watkins with OOIDA talking about broker issues. And we have a couple other callers lined up, but before we go to the phones again, I want to ask a couple more questions. Ann, of you, the big news there's a lot of big news in D.C., I suppose, these days, but as far as infrastructure is concerned, what a lot of people read in the news and listen to on the internet is this $1.2 trillion Senate infrastructure bill, or the bipartisan infrastructure bill, BIF, as they call it. And it's in the news quite a bit. So I guess, Ann, my question for you, is there anything in that bill that TIA likes or does not like?
Yeah, so you're exactly right. The BIF, by the way, what a name, is swirling around, and Lord knows we don't know what's actually going to happen to it. It's above my pay grade, certainly, Mike. It's probably above your pay grade, too.
Very much so.
But there are, right? Exactly. I mean, I think most people can agree that an infrastructure package is a good thing, and then that's probably where the agreement ends. But there were some provisions in there that we were happy to see. And in fact, I had a good conversation with Lewie Pugh about one of them where we got to an agreement about a provision essentially that would ask the FMCSA to provide guidance on what a bona fide agent is versus a broker. As you know, there are some that could be illegally brokering freight, and yet there is not really guidance on what a bona fide agent actually is. So we are happy to find that there's this call for FMCSA to provide guidance on what those are. So that was a win for us. And then this other part that we were happy about was the National Consumer Complaint Database Review. This database was intended to be a resource for people to complain about illegal brokerage, people who are bad actors and are not doing the right thing. As far as we can tell, the FMCSA has never enforced any of those complaints. We know personally of complaints that have been filed, and there has never been any action taken on those. So what this provision would do would call for essentially a review of the database.
Please stay on the line. Live from Exit 24 will start in 4 minutes. Please stay with us. If you'd like to participate, call 317-676-6432. Live from Exit 24 will start in 3 minutes. Call us at 317-6700-OOIDA to join in the live discussion. Live from Exit 24 will start in 2 minutes. Please hang in there. If you'd like to ask a question, call 317-676-6432. OOIDA's Live from Exit 24 will start in 1 minute. Please stand by or call us at 317-676-6432 to join us.
Welcome, listeners. Thanks for tuning in. Live from Exit 24 is brought to you by the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. I'm Norita Taylor, your call screener today. Your host and special guest will join the show shortly. But for now, know that you can take part in today's show by calling with your questions or comments about the topic of discussion, which we'll introduce at the top of the show. The number to call is 317-6700-OOIDA. That's 317-676-6432. And now I'll turn it over to your host.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Live from Exit 24. I am your host, Mike Matusik. We have a great show tonight. We have a couple of new guests, some new faces. Jennifer Harris with a cargo claims adjuster with Commercial Truck Claims Management, and Gary Wright, also physical damage adjuster with Commercial Truck Claims Management. So, guys, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having us.
And we also have Lewie Pugh, who allegedly has the best voice on radio, but I'm not so sure about that.
Hey, my good friend in George from Maine will arm wrestle you to prove it to you.
Well, that's true.
And I'd like to say, I'm glad to see you finally got some good talent on this show compared to that guy, that crusty old guy that was on here last week on this show.
Yeah, he wasn't questionable.
Yeah, I know you're moving up now. Yeah. And you forgot to introduce, we have a co-producer tonight.
Yes, Mrs. Angel Burnell.
Yeah, she'll be filling in for Narita in a couple weeks, so she's training.
Glad to have her with us. Maybe one of these days she'll come on the show and actually be a guest, but I don't know. We'll see. The looks we're getting right now aren't too good. If looks could kill.
And just so everybody knows, the reason you see the back of Gary's head if you're watching on social media, because he has a face for radio. So
I
Gary.
Before we get going, just want to introduce our guests a little bit more. I'll let them introduce themselves. But Jennifer, I know you deal a lot with claims. Gary, you as well. Obviously, this is what you do. I say this in a good way, but if you're listening, these are probably people that you hopefully never have to talk to, right? I mean, you don't want to have to file a claim or go through that sort of stuff. So, but if you do, they do an awesome job. I work with both of them on some issues. So, Jennifer, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do here at OOIDA.
Well, I'm a cargo claims adjuster with OOIDA, so I handle cargo claims that come in. I work with insureds when they have issues with cargoes and brokers sometimes.
Gary?
I work with the physical damage side. So if there's any damage to a truck, trailer, we get the call. We help repair the truck like it was when the damage occurred.
And walk me through this a little bit. So if, just pretend like we know nothing about this. I mean, if someone has an issue, whether it's cargo, physical damage, they need to call their insurance company if that happens to be OOIDA. When they call, if they have an issue with physical damage and cargo, is there someone that they call first? I mean, how does that process work to kind of get going?
When an insured calls in, they'll first go to a claims rep that will collect all the information from them regarding their claim. If there was an accident, where it happened, the time it happened, they're going to collect information about what truck they were driving, what kind of cargo they were hauling, shipper, receiver information, broker information, items like that.
So they need a lot of information when they call in, basically, to get the process started. And is that the same thing? Or Louie?
No, go ahead, and then I got some.
Yeah, no, so if there's physical damage, I get the call. I usually ask, where the damage is on the truck or trailer. What other vehicles were involved. So if say a small car hit a truck, it's going to do completely different damage than a big truck if two big trucks collide. Was the truck towed? Is there lien on the truck? Things like that. Again, I kind of go over the same things like Jennifer said. But yeah, it's just at that point in the game, we're just collecting information so we can process everything.
Sure.
I think before you get too involved in this, both these folks have a trucking background, which I think is something we're proud of here at OOIDA. I mean, we do have a lot of staff here that came from the road or their husband's on the road or boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever. So they both have a little bit of trucking background. So why don't we hear about that little bit of trucking background?
That's a great idea. That's the best idea you've ever had.
Since we're a trucking association there, Mike, in case you forgot.
Jennifer, go for it.
Well, my husband and I owned a trucking company for 10 years. We ran 10 trucks. We had... for a while, we ran Harley Davidsons and van freight, and then we moved to flatbed freight and ran wind towers and preformed concrete all over the country.
And I mean, how'd you get into it? Was it someone in your family with a trucking background, or was it something that you just got into? I mean, how'd you kind of get into trucking?
Yeah, my father was in trucking and storage, warehousing and storage years and years ago. And my husband's father was also in trucking. So when we got together, we were talking about how cool it would be. He actually started running a straight truck for a company who talked him into getting his first tractor trailer. And from there, we just kept adding trucks.
The rest is history, right?
Yeah.
Gary?
So in 1998, I worked for a co-op in Central Missouri, and I was pretty much told you're going to get a CDL. So, okay, I need a job. So, but I had a Class B tank hazmat, and it was dry fertilizer, liquid fertilizer, things like that. Co-op sold, long story short, ended up back here. A friend of mine called me. He goes, "You want a job?" I said, "Well, yeah, what do you got?" And he said, "Well, we're looking for the bad word, freight broker." And I said, okay, and I brokered freight, here in Kansas City for about 15 years, mostly van, some reefer, some flatbed, things like that. But, and background, when I sold parts growing up and in school, I sold big truck parts, batteries, things like that. And I did some work on the trucks at the co-op too. So,
do you still have a CDL?
No, I let it expire. Nope.
Jennifer, did you have one?
No, I didn't.
Okay, so you just worked on
I handled the business side of it all.
Yes, okay. And Louie, you have a background in trucking too, I heard, I think.
Yeah, I read a book about it once, and So watch this movie, Smoking and Bandits. So I know all that stuff.
You know
good,
everything
good
there is
buddy,
to know.
breaker there. And I don't know what to think about this guy across from me. Let's see, he drives a Dodge. He rides an Indian. He was a broker. Maybe he didn't get better talent this time.
I'm sort of thinking. I'm
And
questioning
Michigan
that.
beat Ohio State.
Yeah, we don't want to talk about that, Gary. We do have one quick thing on Facebook that's off subject to what our folks are from, and it won't take long. Brian just messaged in, just said off subject, which is fine. We take all
Absolutely.
calls, but off subject. But I would like to see us talk Congress into sleeping in a truck on the shoulder of a rest area that's full and tell us why he thinks there's not enough people signing up to drive. And he makes a very good statement. And I just replied to him and said, we have been lucky enough to get a couple FMCSA directors in the past to take a cross-country truck trip and sleep in a truck a couple nights. But we've never got anybody I know from Congress to do it, at least not since I've been around.
Yeah, not sleeping. I know years ago, there was a Virginia congressman. This goes back probably 15, 20 years. That spent a little bit of time in a truck. And of course, you have people in Congress like Mike Bost, Congressman Bost, who has a CDL.
And he slept in a truck and drove a truck. He knows his truck. So I consider him a good friend of ours, and I've met with him constantly. But he is correct. The majority of Congress doesn't get it, doesn't understand it, and unfortunately, probably never will.
Yeah, absolutely.
So anyway, that's all I got on my end right now. So
I want to kind of back to the claims thing, and I think this issue that I want to address next is something that comes up in other areas or other issues that we talk about. But as far as a claim is concerned, dash cams, right? I mean, dash cams, is this something that a lot of that a lot of people have, right? To
forward facing
not
dash
cams, not driver facing.
Right.
So let's be very clear on that. That's
Yes.
a great point, Lewie. So forward facing dash cams. I mean, is that something that more carriers and drivers are using? Is it something that when people file a claim, it helps to have that, right? I mean, that's your evidence essentially, if you're trying to determine fault. What do you guys think about that?
I think they're a great idea because, like you said, it does show fault. It shows exactly what happened, because as well as I do, there's one story and then there's one story and then somewhere in the middle is the truth.
Right.
So the dash cam will show exactly what happened, and I've seen a lot, and it can show who's innocent, whether it's a crash or what have you, and some insurance companies, they take some part of the deductible off if the dash cam captures the strike. So instead of if you got $1,000 deductible, if the dash cam captures a strike, they might take $250 off or whatever. So it might save you some money in the long run too.
Sure, absolutely. And I go back to some experience I had on a towing issue that we'll probably talk about a little bit. We actually FOIA'd the dash cam footage of the responding, I guess the lead trooper, if you will, down in Arkansas. And this goes back a number of years, but we used his dash cam footage as part of our towing complaint that we had. So without that, we really had no case. So I don't know, Jennifer, do you guys see more people using dash cams? I mean, or is it just something that's kind of plateaued?
Yeah, we definitely are seeing more people using dash cams. And since dash cams came out and are being used more, we're seeing things change. I mean, the old assumption was when there was a truck involved in an accident, fingers are pointing at the trucker. Now they're being disproved by dash cameras. It's really helped out a lot.
Yeah, and I would just add, I never had a dash cam, and I probably should have. And seeing what I've seen since coming in here, I probably would now if I was to go back on the road. But with that being said, even if you were at fault, it kind of gives you an idea where you're at with your business, whether you're at fault or they're at fault. So you have that protection too. Not only does it help your insurance company or your attorneys or whoever if you get sued or whatever fighting, but it also you can kind of prepare yourself to know where you are.
Are there any other things? I mean, if I'm thinking about trying to mitigate, a claim or try to prevent something like that, I mean, are there any other things besides dash cams that drivers and carriers can basically use or have that would sort of help if they do need to file a claim? And anything that comes to mind?
One thing I did, and I don't mean to jump in, but like if I loaded something, especially when cell phones, we all got these things now. And before these, I didn't so much. But once I got these, if I loaded a load and I thought something looked goofy or wasn't happy with something, I would take pictures right there. And I would try to take pictures with the shipper, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, one time I got pulled over and they said my placards were missing off of my truck. That's what the cop wrote me. Well, they weren't. So I took pictures of my truck and got that trooper, New Jersey trooper, right behind my truck as well. So saying, here I am pulled over and they're on my truck.
Well, that was...
But yeah.
And Jennifer, you mentioned, one of the things you mentioned to me earlier in the day actually was a preventable claim, and one of those was improper load securement. So, I mean, does it help for people to basically take pictures like Lewie said? I mean, is that something that people do? Do you guys see that, or is it sort of few and far between?
Absolutely, and that's a big issue with cargoes is securement issues, whether it's the shipper load and count, the shipper loads something on a flatbed, but ultimately it's the driver or carrier's responsibility to make sure everything's secured properly. It's a little tougher when you're in a dry van and the shipper's loading it and you can't see how they got it loaded in there. But if you have any issues at the shipper's, definitely you have a question, take a picture, but you should also notify them that you're not comfortable with it. If you have a broker, you should notify them as well before you leave.
Exactly. I mean, and I would agree with that, what she said. I used to be before this, and even with this, I pulled a flatbed as the majority of my career. I've loaded lots of stuff out in the pouring down rain, but they tell me I got to put a tarp on it. I would write on there loaded, because it's going to be wet when you get there. I would write right on that bill, and I'd make the guy who loaded me sign that paperwork saying that it was and dated that it was loaded in the rain. You know, it's a CYA deal.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things, one of the issues we've covered before is non-consensual towing, and as part of that, we sort of talked about things that things that people can do to figure out what kind of coverage they have. What would their coverage pay for a claim associated with the tow associated with the claim? Can people call you guys if they just have a general claims question, right? Like if, for example, I was, got in an accident or can they call you with general questions that they may or may not have?
Yeah, I look forward to it. I mean, the biggest part of my job is to fight for the rights of truckers. So if they have an issue that might not even merit a claim, but they're having an issue, I'll help them with it, find somebody that can help them with it, call and fight on their behalf.
In other words, they can talk to you even if they don't have a claim, just with general questions. So
Sure.
I think that's a great thing about OOIDA too. So we're going to take our first break. The number to dial in is 317-676-6432. Again, that's 317-676-6432. We're talking with Jennifer Harris and Gary Wright with Commercial Truck Claims Management. And, of course, the one and only Lewie Pugh with the best voice on radio and a great happy birthday singer, by the way. I've heard it.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Again, the number to dial in is 317-676-6432. We'll be right back.
$45. It ain't what it used to be. Today, with OOIDA, it can be worth a whole lot more. A $45 membership helps you save with special pricing from top vendors on equipment, fuel, tires, services, and much more. Plus things the whole family can enjoy, like restaurants and travel. Save hundreds, even thousands. You can't afford not to be a member of OOIDA. Go to OOIDA.com. Your job is to drive. Our job is to help with everything else.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back. This is live from Exit 24, and I'm your host, Mike Matusik. And before we get going on this topic, I do want to briefly mention, in the next couple of shows, next 3 or 4 shows, we're going to try to get someone from the Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance on, talk about truck enforcement issues. And there's all kinds of issues we could probably cover with CVSA. We may also talk with some folks that have been in trucking for a while and kind of take a trip down memory lane. And I know there's a former board member of ours that has been in trucking for a long time. So we may get him. We may look for someone else. But and then we're also trying to get someone from FMCSA, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. So these are kind of the next few shows that we're trying to line up. So if you like it, hopefully you'll join in. And Lewie, I don't know if you wanted to say anything about any of those that I just mentioned.
Well, the historical show, if we can get Mr. Taylor, who was a board member there, and he's quite a colorful carrier, but yeah, he started driving a truck when he was 13 or 14. He's from the Winchester, Virginia area.
So he's logged a few miles.
He's 86 or 87, I think, now, and John just retired a couple years ago. So there's how much experience he's got. He's got, lots and lots of miles, and he'll never had an accident. and but he's got a shoebox full of tickets, as John likes to tell. So, but he's
awesome.
a great guy, and he has some great stories. I got to interview him we have a video on our Facebook somewhere you can find. I interviewed him at the Antique Truck Historical Society show in Virginia this year, and it was a really good, really great interview and stuff. So yeah, John's a great guy, great personal friend, and a great guy.
And where can people find that interview at? Is that on the?
If you go on Facebook and go on the Owner Operator Independent Driver Association page, and there's a video thing, you can flip down through there. I got a few videos from there where I interviewed quite a few people, but John's is probably the best one to watch. No offense to the other guys, but John's is really good. John's a good
awesome.
guy.
That's awesome. So back to the claims issue that we're kind of talking about, and I'm going to throw a general question at you guys. But when someone calls in with a question about a claim or an actual claim, are there questions that people should ask that they don't? And I know that may sound like a weird question, but you don't know what you don't know, I guess, if you're not familiar with filing a claim, right? If you've never done it before, what kind of questions or things should people really pay attention to when they first make that phone call?
I think we get calls sometimes where people don't know what they have, what their insurance is. I had a gentleman a week ago. He had supplemental tow coverage, which if you don't have supplemental tow coverage, is something that we highly recommend, because we know working here, unfortunately, that a tow can get into tens of thousands of dollars, and it could bankrupt a small carrier. Anyway, so he didn't know he had supplemental tow, and he had. Thank goodness he did, because it was a fairly high tow bill. But I think that's one thing that people should find out when they call in, whether it's to us or another insurance, is what do they have on coverage, whether it's supplemental tow or they have rental reimbursement coverage or downtime, supplemental downtime, something like that, because all those, eventually will cost the owner-operator, small businessman money, down the line.
Absolutely. Well, and when I pay my car insurance premium every 6 months, I usually call my insurance company and say it's a local company, a local branch that I use, and I always ask them, what is this again? Like, what kind of coverage do I have? And they sort of remind me every 6 months. And Jennifer, on the towing stuff, right? I mean, the supplemental coverage is obviously very important, as you well know. But I guess whether you are insured, it doesn't matter who you're insured with. Find out what kind of coverage you have, and especially on the cargo side, physical damage, any sort of supplemental coverage. I mean, those are questions that might not necessarily come to you guys in claims, but they would come somewhere here or whoever you're insured with.
Mm-hmm. I think sometimes, when they're out there doing business, they're not thinking about how much coverage they have or what coverage they have until they're in a situation where they need to use it. So when you call in with a new claim or questions about a claim, that would be some of the first questions I'd ask. Remind me, how much coverage do I have? How much cargo coverage do I have? How much tow coverage do I have? And what's my deductible? And when do I pay that deductible?
But let me interrupt. What's the average cargo coverage that people have now? Is it still 100,000?
Average is 100,000, and it is a problem that I see a lot where they're undercovered. They don't have enough coverage, and the brokers are fully aware of how much coverage they have because they get their certificate of insurance, but they're loading them with cargoes that's valued well beyond $100,000.
That happened a couple times to me when I was brokering.
Yeah.
So what happens in that situation then, right? If you have $100,000 in coverage, but you have a $250,000 load, is the broker on the hook for the difference, or is the carrier or driver?
Well, primarily with any cargo claim, the carrier is responsible for the load, and then their insurance will come in and indemnify them for the loss. So if they're indemnifying them for $100,000, but it's worth $250,000 and it's a total loss, they could be held liable for that
$150,000.
Mm-hmm. And there are some cargo or brokers coverages that will come in, but not all of them have that kind of coverage.
Lewie, you were going to say something, I think, earlier when.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, I think guys too, I mean, I say it myself from the 20 plus years I was on the road. You don't realize until one of these bad things happens to either somebody like really close. You don't even think about it. I never realized how bad this towing thing. I mean, even being on the board here, and we talk about it and a little bit about board meetings, I didn't realize until I came to work in this office exactly how bad the towing problem is that we talk about and how out of control that stuff can be.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I mean, that's just it's crazy, but it's So I don't think guys, I was thinking you're always looking for a way to save money. I don't need that, and guys don't realize that, and I understand why, because a lot of stuff. I mean, I use it like the occupational accident insurance. I never had occupational accident insurance until I was leased to a carrier that forced me to have occupational accident insurance. And guess what? I got hurt at that carrier, and I'm really glad I had it because it took care of all my medical bills. I was off work for 6-8 weeks. I broke my collarbone, and they paid for everything. I got so much money each week for while I was off. And I mean, I could have withstood it and paid it everything, but it was really a help. And at the end, what I paid for that was nothing compared to what my medical bills would have been. And you don't, you never think it's going to happen to you. But like, I thought occupational accident was just a crooked way to steal some money off of me. and I complained about it when I had to until I needed it, and then I'm glad I had it. So, and that's what I try to tell people. But yeah, I don't think you just don't realize it because you're one guy, one truck, you're in your own world, just unless it happens to you, unfortunately.
Well, that's a good point. There's a lot of things that you should think of before you find yourself in a situation where you have a claim. And coverage is one of the most important things. You want to make sure you have plenty of coverage. I mean, there's gap coverage and downtime coverage and extra tow coverage. Those tow bills out there, as you know, Mike, can be $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 and more north of that. So you should definitely ask how much coverage you have and make sure you're covered before you're in that type of situation.
And that's usually my first answer when I get asked the question, on the towing issue, hey, Mike, what should I be doing to kind of protect myself from this? And my first answer is, well, know what coverage you have, right? Call your insurance company and hypothetically say, hey, if I'm involved in an accident, regardless of fault, how much towing coverage would I have? And it's not always a black and white answer there, right? I mean, there are formulas and different things, but generally speaking, they should be able to tell you roughly what you would have in any of these given scenarios, or if you have enough or not enough. And on the cargo side, Jennifer, can you explain a little bit more on that, right? You mentioned the gap coverage and stuff. I mean, what other, are there any other specific coverages, whether it's in cargo or Gary with physical damage, that people can have, kind of these add-on, these layers of coverage?
Yeah. Like I mentioned, the rental reimbursement, supplemental tow, the downtime. I mean, those are the three major ones I can really think of. Because downtime, I've had a gentleman who he wrecked his truck. It was about the middle of May, and he didn't get the truck out of the shop until the first week in November. It was a 2021 Freightliner, and of course parts were scarce. He had some downtime coverage with us, but he didn't have supplemental, and that supplemental would have benefited him because it would have paid off for the downtime that he was down. As far as, we talked about the supplemental tow. But yeah, it's you never know how long the truck's going to be down,
Yep.
So we, like I said, we encourage people to get the downtime. The rental reimbursement, kind of same thing there, Right now, trucks are scarce. No one can hardly even get a truck. But, if you don't have any other way of income, you may have to go find a rental, and that rental, ours is a reimbursement policy. But again, at least you can make some kind of money while your truck is down. You can, keep working.
Well, and on, as far as like the downtime coverage that you're talking about, I mean, these claims can take weeks, months to kind of go through that process, right? I mean, Jennifer, what's the, roughly how long does it take on average to go through one of these claims? And I know it's a little, those numbers might vary, right? If you're dealing with a $100,000 fraudulent tow bill, that's going to probably, make things take longer than it really should. But roughly, generally speaking, how long does it take for a claim to kind of go through the process?
It's going to depend on the insured and the claimant and when they get their paperwork in. So for us, as soon as we get all the paperwork in, we settle that claim that day. We don't have any kind of lag time. So a claimant has up to 9 months to file a claim. So I've seen instances where a receiver has just made a notation on a bill of lading that there's a shortage or some damaged product, and the broker will just hold the carrier's pay right at that point and then say they're waiting for their customer to file a claim. So it could be up to 9 months before that customer even files a claim. And then there are documents that the insured will have to get for us, which are going to be things like their bill of lading and a copy of the title of their truck and a statement form. And then the claimant's going to send in their proof of loss forms, like the proof of the cost of the cargo and proof of damages, maybe photos or temperature reports.
Gary,
so
is that kind of the same thing on physical damage? I mean, my guess is there could be disputes with how much the truck is worth, how much the trailer's worth. I mean, where someone wants to take it to get it fixed and getting the proper. I mean, it can drag on for a little while, can't it?
Yeah. We don't dictate where a guy has to get a truck fixed. I mean, we don't say you got to go here, go there. But as far as the documents, like Jennifer said, we need a copy of the title. We need it's a driver statement form, basically just information form as to what happened. We need tow bills. They're pictures of all the damage, whether it's under the hood, outside, whatever. And then we always require a copy or a picture of the VIN sticker plate off the truck or trailer. That way it just matches all together. And like she said, once we get that paperwork in, it's a relatively quick process. Unfortunately, and I don't know, for some reason, we just have trouble getting that paperwork. And I don't know if the insured doesn't know the urgency. Yeah, I mean, if you say you hit a dog or something and just scuffed your bumper a little bit, and maybe wrinkled the fender, you're not going to have much hurry to get the truck fixed, you know. So each one is different. But I've settled claims in a week, and then it's taken me some for a month and a half, 3 months.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Louis, did you want to add something?
Yeah, well, I know. What about now with the way the truck values have changed? Do you need to make sure you got enough on your truck or something like that too, Gary? Because, an 87 for Peterbilt is worth a lot different now than it was a year ago or 2 years ago.
Yeah, values have gone up tremendously in the last even 3 months. For example, I had a wrecked trailer, total trailer, and the cash value come out on that was $65,000 for a 2019 Vanguard van trailer. Nothing special about it, And trucks are the same way, like Louis said, especially the pre-2000 trucks because you don't have to have ELDs. So, but yeah, and I read an article here a couple days ago that they expect the truck values to keep going up.
So in other words, make sure you got the right amount of value on your truck, because I know how you can change the value.
Right. Yep.
We're going to be back in just a minute. Again, the number to dial in is 317-676-6432. That's 317-676-6432. Stay tuned. We'll be back in just a minute.
I'm a dad.
A son. A husband.
My kids.
Chrome. And I am a professional truck driver.
And together we are OOIDA.
OOIDA was founded by truckers to stand up and speak on behalf of truckers. We've done that by combining the individual voices of our members into a single, powerful voice. Protecting your interests, defending your rights.
Join us.
Make your voice heard. Join OOIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Call 1-800-444-5791 or visit OOIDA.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back. This is live from Exit 24. We are with Jennifer Harris and Gary Wright with Commercial Truck Claims Management and I'll just say Lewie Pugh. I'm your host, Mike Matusik, and we're going to actually take a call. We have a caller, and this is someone that I recognize. Gail, if you are on the line, you're on the show. How you doing this evening?
Hi, good, great show.
Thank you. Thank you very much for calling in.
You're welcome. I just wanted to say thank you. for a point that Jennifer had just made, I am a freight broker, so I'm on the other end of things than, a lot of the carriers who are listening. But when you were just talking about the limit on the cargo insurance, 100,000, 250, I sat and ran just a mental list of my customers, and I could not pinpoint the value of all of my customers' freight, their freight value. And so tomorrow I'm actually going to draft a letter to my customers and to make sure that we're under that 100,000 to avoid that type of problem. Not having enough cargo coverage. I had never thought about that. And so maybe that's something other brokers, maybe, we could do our part and, avoid that situation, not having enough cargo coverage.
Absolutely.
So
Well,
I just have to thank her for bringing that up.
I say kudos to Gail for actually being a broker who cares about the trucker maybe getting in a jam. Those are few and far between.
Hey, you're welcome.
So thank you, Gail.
You're welcome. I drove for a lot of years. I still actually have my CDL also, so I've been out there and done the job. So I do have a lot of respect for every driver. Every driver I work with, they're treated with utmost respect from me, always.
And Gail is someone I email with quite a bit, and always enjoy our exchanges.
That doesn't really give her a lot of good kudos if she emails with you. I feel bad for her.
Now, Gail, I'm gonna reply to your latest email and copy Lewie, so you can talk directly with Lewie and just cut me out of the picture if you want. So
okay.
Well, it'll be a lot more intelligent conversation.
I know, whatever. Gail, anything else that you want to add, or any other questions that you have?
That's it. That was it. Just a thank you. I do actually have another question on the broker side also, where possibly the coercion law is involved. I'm real cautious with my carriers when I send out rate confirmations to, when they're, the first come, first serve receiver, to always make sure arrive as early as legal, because I never want to, to push a carrier to do something that is not legal. Back in the day when I was driving, it was, the coast to Ohio, you had to make a third morning delivery, and no one really cared how you did it. Now it's a whole different ballgame. And with where the coercion law is concerned, have you guys had any claims against brokers, with that? And if you have, what else as a broker can I do to protect myself to make sure we're doing everything right, to not push carriers and to make sure everything is, maybe in writing or verbalized, or, just to make sure everybody's okay?
That's a good question, Gail.
The letter of the law.
Yeah. No, we don't we haven't had anything that's come across like that. I mean, we do have a specific exclusion in the cargo policy. If there's a claim for loss to cargo due to it being late, then that's specifically excluded. But no one's called in.
Welcome, listeners.
Lewie, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I would say, Gail, you're probably should be more, and I appreciate your concern on that, don't get me wrong. I think your concern would probably be more with if there's an accident or something like that, unfortunately.
Right.
And it goes to the courts, because usually these trial attorneys, and I think you're from Indiana, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, you got a great one out there. He owns about half the billboards in the state of Indiana, I think. So, but anyway, those guys are going to go after everybody, and they'll sue the carrier if they find out there was a broker involved. They could go after a broker and stuff like that. So, yeah, you're definitely probably doing the right thing by putting that on there to protect yourself a little bit.
I remember.
Just make sure everything's in writing.
It's probably been 10, 12 years ago where there's a big lawsuit against C.H. Robinson. And the judge pretty much decided that C.H. Robinson took control of that driver as a carrier. And I can't remember all the gory details, but come find out that they decided that C.H. Robinson took control as a dispatcher. So they found C.H. Robinson liable for the accident that driver was in. And they millions of dollars, so.
Very messy.
I've seen shippers get sued and, and stuff with the freight as well. So, yeah, I would completely agree.
It can get ugly real fast.
It can get real ugly. So, yeah, you need to do whatever you need to protect yourself. But, again, my hat's off to you for worrying about the drivers.
Hey, Gail, I have two questions for you, if you don't mind.
Sure.
How long did you drive, and then how did you get into brokering?
I I drove for 15 years and ran West Coast. Just ran West Coast to Ohio, and back in the day, I started in '81. You did your turn a week. It wasn't always on paper, but you had to do your turn a week, and hauled produce back and forth. And then the brokerage, we started a trucking company in '97. No, I'm sorry, '90. We started our first trucking company, and just our customer base was built up through the trucking company. And then '97, I was expecting my daughter, so we actually sold all of our equipment and kept our customers, and because we had filed for our brokerage authority when we started our company in '90. And then due to a splitting of the two partners, I started cross country, and in 2007, and just carried on my own with that. So it's kind of been a journey. Transportation's been all I've done, and I love it. You either love it or you hate it. I don't think there's a lot of middle ground in transportation. You love it or you hate it.
That's probably right.
There is to it.
And now, is there any sort of freight that you focus on, or any sort of niche that you fill, or what does that look like?
No, I'm right here on the Ohio-Indiana state line, so I just run right here off of 70, just here in our backyard. But I do, just dry van freight is what I do right now. A lot of plastics, funeral items, some steel, auto parts, that type of thing.
When I heard you mention
dry freight.
When you mentioned Ohio, I saw Louie's ears perk up. He's from the Ohio Valley and loves Ohio. So
yeah, I'm on the other side of the state.
Well,
I'm where the Christian people live. I'm from Southeast Ohio.
There you go.
Well, Gail, thank you so much. Great to hear your voice. Always enjoy our emails, and I hope you'll keep in touch. I know you will, and certainly I will too. So thank you very much.
Have a great show.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gail.
That was awesome. Always great to hear from Gail. She is very tuned into things, always responds to the emails that OOIDA sends out, at least on the government affairs stuff. So great, very, very good to hear her voice. Jennifer, Gary, I want to kind of go to another question. Is there, I guess two questions. The first being, if someone is not at fault, right? So I'm driving along, right? I'm in my truck, getting in an accident. I'm rear-ended by somebody. Should the driver or the carrier, whoever is the insured, right, should they still call their insurance company and potentially file a claim, or at least notify them that,
Absolutely.
Hey, I've been involved in an so what does that look like, Gary?
Well, it's unfortunately it's real common. But yeah, I mean, you need to report anything and everything, so that way we have knowledge of it. And sometimes the other party is unwilling to work with you, and that's common too. Or we'll get a phone call and the insured will say, "Well, I'm going to go to the other party. That's not my fault. And sometimes the other party will come through and take care of the damage, and sometimes they cease all correspondence. And nothing happens. So then they end up calling us back, and we process the claim, which is fine. That's what we're here to do for our members and our customers, But one thing to remember, that if they try to go to the other party, you're not the other party's insurance's priority. Whereas, if you're insured with us, you're our priority. So we want to get your truck fixed and get you back on the road as quick as we can.
Exactly.
Where the other party, they're not too concerned about your health and well-being, and they get to you when they get to you.
So even if you're confident that you're not at fault, let your insurance company know, and sort of let the insurance companies battle it out amongst each other, right?
Right. Yeah, there's been times where I just got one today where the gentleman, whatever reason, he's going to go to the other party, and they ceased all correspondence, and he's called us back and said, I need to process a claim. So we process a claim. Now, sometimes if you have damage to the truck or trailer, the damage may be minimal, and sometimes you'll fix it yourself. But we still want that call. We still want that call, like that call, and that way we at least have a record of it.
You probably should also report it to enforcement, because unfortunately, some little nip thing, like you said, some little
Headlight,
thing.
taillight.
You fix it yourself, and then a few weeks later you're getting something you're getting sued or who knows what, and you haven't reported, and becomes a he said she said deal.
Right.
So while we're on this, maybe have a little fun, I guess. And I'm going to ask this question and basically say that, the question is there a claim that you guys remember that sort of sticks out as bizarre, or and I say that because like on towing stuff that which is an issue that I work on, I remember some high tow bills, right? I remember $185,000 one out of West Virginia, $154,000 in upstate New York. So those are things that kind of stick out to me. And I know you can't get specific, but are there any claims that were just interesting, right? Or maybe it was an interesting cargo. I think one time I heard of a claim where it involved like some, military equipment or like some missiles or something. But anything that sticks out to you guys?
All of those, yes. Yeah, high tow bills, cargo that's just way high valued. I had an insured that was hauling an airplane engine that was worth upwards to $2 million. Yeah, $100,000 in coverage.
Oh no!
Oh no!
So that one sticks out.
Yes,
for the wrong reasons, right?
That one sticks out.
It sticks out of somewhere, all right.
I had a gentleman here. It's been a year ago. He was hauling a blade for one of the big windmills, and he actually got rear-ended. No one hurt, thank God. But I think he said that blade was like 205 feet long, and the guy behind him got impatient, and he drove basically through that windmill blade, and he had a new truck, unfortunately. It was less than a year old.
Is there any
I have a happy story.
Oh, let's hear it. Let's hear it, Louie.
No. Of course, I didn't take the call or the insurance, but I saw this, and what went through my mind when it happened is I would have loved to have been the guy to call the insurance company to report this. And this has been a few years ago on the Pennsylvania Turnpike. I'm coming back from Philly or somewhere one day. It's a nice sunny day out, be bopping across. An airplane hit a semi in the rear end of a semi on the Pennsylvania Turnpike over about halfway across from Somerset or somewhere. But when I got home, I got on the computer and Googled the news over, and what had happened was, I guess this guy bought this plane in New York. He was from South Carolina. It was some sort of test plane this guy built, which this all sounds crazy to me. He flies up to New York, buys this homemade airplane, and he's going to fly it back to South Carolina. Now, it's in the spring, or I don't know. It was still a little cold out. Apparently, it got a little too cold up in the air, and it froze up, and it came down and landed, and he put her down on the Pennsylvania Turnpike and hit this semi right in the ass.
That's just not something you hear every day.
And I'm thinking, who wants to pick up the phone and call my insurance guy and say, hey, I just got hit rear-ended by an airplane on the Pennsylvania Turnpike. And I got one more funny one as soon as we come back.
When we come back, I want to hear it. Is it going to be better than the airplane one?
Maybe not better, but this one happened to me.
Well, then it will be better.
Yeah.
We're going to be right back. Again, the number to dial in is 317-676-6432. Again, that's 317-676-6432. Stay tuned. We'll be back in just a minute.
Every time you turn the key, you hope you've crossed your I's and dotted your T's. Because the last thing you want to be is non-compliant with the DOT. Fortunately, there's OOIDA. It's like spell check for truckers. Federal regulations? Check. Lease agreements and warranties? Check. Permits, drug and alcohol testing? Check and check. Go to OOIDA.com because your job is to drive. Our job is to help with everything else.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I'm already laughing thinking about whatever story Louie's going to tell, and then I'm thinking about my own story about some of the interesting freight.
We can't
that
tell
I've heard
that
about.
on this channel.
Well, yeah.
It's a family program.
Your stories,
isn't it?
yeah.
Let's just get right into it. Louie, you had something you wanted to say before the break about an interesting claim, or
the only bad claim I ever had, or I guess you would say is a bad claim, was I bought a brand new truck in November of 2011. Last truck I had, bought brand new, take it home, and I earned it less than one day. I haven't even got my signs or nothing on it yet, and I had this pretty good dedicated deal, and they needed this stuff taken about 150 miles. And of course, I'm not really supposed to be doing anything at the time, but I'm okay. Yeah, I'll run it down there for you in the middle of the night and get it delivered and come back in Southern Ohio. So I'm talking to my good friend Mark Elrod. So I blame all this on him.
He's a good person to blame.
Yeah, Mark, it's all his fault.
Yeah,
exactly. I'm coming down on 50 there to get ready to cross the Ohio River back into Ohio there down by Parkersburg. And I'm dropping down this hill about 7 miles an hour, and this freaking big old buck jumps up over the guardrail. And I plowed him with my freaking brand new truck. It had like 121 miles on it. Did $10,000 worth of damage. And yes, I literally got out on the road and kicked that freaking dude I don't know how many times and cussed him and his mother and his brother and everybody else in his family.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah. But so that was my only big claim on a brand new. So I understand the poor guy getting rear-ended in the thing. Today I called my insurance and insure a brand new truck. The next day I call my insurance man and say, hey, I just wrecked my brand new truck.
Not the best call to have to make, but it happens.
But
you know?
yeah,
That's
it
why,
happens. You
that's
want to
why
make
you
sure.
have insurance.
Yeah, exactly. Unfortunately.
That brings up a good point where you talk about hitting gear. Of course, this time of year, deer out, and we getting a lot of deer hits. Guys will put the moose guards on their truck, headache racks, stainless steel fenders, things like that.
Right, I know where you're going with this. A very good point.
So that's something that in reality needs to be endorsed on your insurance policy, because if something happens to those pieces of equipment that's non-stock, that didn't come on the truck, and they're not endorsed, they can't be paid for. They can't be covered in a loss. So it's important that you get those moose guards, endorsed, your headache racks endorsed, things like that.
Yeah, and our little plug for our Truck to Success thing that we do once a year with our foundation for guys. That's one thing that Mac, who used to do the claims thing, he would show a picture of a truck like you're saying with a headache rack and all the fancy stuff and everything
Custom
on
paint,
it.
all tricked
Yeah,
out.
custom truck. Something looks like 4 states did it. The Martin boys had a hold of it.
Right.
And he goes, "This is your truck." And then he throws this old T600 or Kenworth up there with mismatched fenders and the hood's a different color from the body and all that stuff. This is what you have insured.
Right.
So make sure that you're paying to insure this.
APUs is a big thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's a very good point, Gary. Very good point.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm glad we covered that. Is there any other freight that sticks out to you guys? I mean, whenever I talk to members of ours, a lot of times I ask them, what are you hauling? And it's just totally random. And I think one of the more interesting ones, I don't know if it's interesting or it's kind of gross to me, but was pulverized chicken, basically, is the pink slime, if you will. And that was one that always kind of sticks out to me. This was, a member I talked to a while ago, but it's kind of fascinating when you talk to people out there, and you ask them what they're hauling, because the truck on the road next to you, it could be anything in there, to be honest. It's really interesting. I talked to a member of ours a couple of weeks ago that hauls very expensive exotic cars, and you don't see the cars because they're covered. They're in a covered van, enclosed trailer. But it's still interesting to hear that kind of stuff. And any stories like that stick out to you guys?
I know when I was broken, we hauled some like lab testing material in the petri dishes, and they I think we picked them up at O'Hare or Midway in Chicago, and some of that freight. I mean, we had maybe 3 pallets of the stuff of the whatever they call it, the testing stuff, whatever. Anyway, I think some of that was worth over $650,000.
Oof.
And that stuck out. And then another one, I tell this story in Truck to Success. We had a customer that hauled the foil for like your holograms on the credit cards and wine bottle labels, things like that. He had 3 rolls of that foil in the truck. Long story short,
are those just big coils, basically, of foil?
They're like big rolls of aluminum foil. They're probably 6-7 feet long, and he had 3 rolls in there. Long story short, he wrecked the truck, burned up one of those rolls of foil, and I was a customer service, and I called her and I said, "Hey, we had a problem, and how much is this cargo worth?" She said $101,000, and like you said, he had $100,000 cargo, and thankfully my customer covered the loss, But that one sticks out a lot because it could happen to anyone.
Right, right, absolutely. And what did that weigh roughly? I mean, you said 3 big rolls. Did that weigh out or
no? It was. I can't remember what it weighed, 30,000, 25, something like that. It wasn't real heavy.
Jennifer, anything that sticks out?
Not really. I think I'm becoming numb to this because I had a couple loads of that pink slime. One, the driver was just going down the road and it was just coming out of the back of his trailer when he was going down the road because I think they punctured it when they were loading it with the forklift.
Lamb slurry.
Yeah. And they were, everyone was trying to get him to pull over. This pink chicken slimes
on its way
going
to
down
McDonald's
the highway.
or something.
Oh,
we did another broker load. It was the big totes of salad dressing in Independence, and one of those big totes broke, and they had salad dressing all over the floor of the trailer, up down the walls.
Get messy pretty quick.
Oh yeah.
yeah.
I guess Lewie, anything to add to that? I mean, what's the weirdest thing you've ever hauled?
Besides you and my pickup tonight to dinner?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I've had a lot of crazy stuff. I mean, one of the craziest things, me and another guy, we loaded airplane. We were out in Arizona one time, which I hardly ever went out west, but we went out by Phoenix. We went to this, it was an old World War II Army air base. They turned it an airplane junkyard, and we picked up this Learjet, and he had the plane and the body, fuselage, I guess, and I had the wings. So the CB, we heard every joke in the world, the two of us with our pieces of airplane, why don't they just put it together, fly, and all this stuff. I don't know. I've had a lot of crazy stuff, but I'd have to sit around and think about more crazy places I went than where I went, some of the places and stuff, that's what sticks in my mind.
Did you ever go in the caves up here in Independence Lee Summit?
No, I tried to make the West Coast for Lewie Pugh was the Mississippi River. Right. I came to Kansas City once in a truck before I was on the board, and I think I came to Kansas City twice as a board member, and I realized there's nothing out of Kansas City going east that would pull off flatbed divers.
Those caves are really interesting if you've never been in one.
Yeah, I used to deliver. And I guess we got time. I used to deliver to this little mom and pop place down in North Carolina in the mountains. And I can't think of the name of that town. It was real close to Spruce Pine. But anyway, down in the mountains. And it was this old man, two old men, old women. And they made metal roofing in an old bank barn. And that's where they did. And the nicest people in the world. But the driveway, the main road was at the height of the roof of their barn, and it was straight down in there and straight down up. Well, I had this Freightliner with the real long, skinny fuel tanks, and I had like a quarter tank of fuel or something. I didn't think anything about it. I started down in there where they sucked the fuel from the back. I got halfway down in there and ran out of fuel. So I had to tear my fuel filters and everything off. And that old man and woman are out there watching me. So my buddy goes down there a few weeks later, and he's like, they were talking about, and I told him, I was the first one, I said, Mars Hill, North Carolina. He says, I told him, make sure you got fuel before you go in there. And they were telling him, that last guy, he ran out of fuel. So
he must have been from Ohio.
Yeah. And then then I went down there one other time, and they got gravel on the hill. Well, then they had it so thick, I couldn't, you'd go up it.
Couldn't get traction.
And you had, you get to the top, and you can't see till you get to the top. So I'd go up, and somebody'd come, and I'd stop, and I'd spin out. So finally, after the fourth time, I was like, you guys have got to go up and stop traffic. I'm never going to get out of this place.
That's awesome. Wasn't awesome at the time, probably. But
it was all right, but yeah.
Part of trucking, I guess, right?
And then when I was frac sand, there's all kinds of fun places in West Virginia. I was hauling frac sand.
Gary, you mentioned endorsements on things like moose guards and aftermarket stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything like that? I mean, anything in addition to that you want to mention that insurance may not cover if you're not, if you don't notify your insurance company that you have this, or if you don't keep it up to date? Anything?
Yeah. Things like we've had questions. Does it cover like a hotel room, meals, transportation back home, things like that? And most generally, no. I can't think of any type of coverage that would cover a meal or a ride home, anything like that. I can't think of really off the top of my head, and obviously, I'll think all kinds of things tomorrow, and shoot you an email. But right now, I just can't. Those three things really stand out. But
so you mentioned Truck to Success. I want to just quickly kind of cover that as well with the last couple of minutes we have. I mean, all these claims issues that we're talking about, you can't possibly cover everything in an hour. There's just dozens or hundreds of issues that you have to really be mindful of and know about. And Lewie, Truck to Success is something that you started a few years back. I think you, and then with Tom Weekly and Andrew King with the foundation and others. Can you give us a little background on that?
Yeah, kind of. Tom and them and Foundation did it a few years ago. Here in house, been a while, and then kind of went away. And then when I come back, because to me that's something that's really important to me here. I think it's our job at OOIDA to try to educate and help people and bring our industry up instead of bringing our industry, because there's so many people out there trying to bring our industry down. And there's so much bad information. There's so much stuff out there to get yourself in trouble. There's vultures on every corner. It seems like trying to take your money and screw you any way they can in trucking, unfortunately. So that's kind of why I really wanted to do the whole Truck to Success thing. And we're proud of our people. I mean, we're lucky here at OOIDA. We got a lot of experts in-house. The experts that we don't have in-house we bring in, but it's a pretty much an A to Z on how to become a trucker. It's kind of set up and designed to take somebody who's a driver, and we go through all the steps of business planning and finances and taxes and how to set up your business and how to spec a truck, how to lease to a carrier, how to get your own authority, insurance, medical, everything. But we have a lot of guys come that already have a truck. They're either leased to a carrier, and maybe they're wanting to make the next step. We have guys that come with their own authority too, and they're just looking for better ways and better helps. Because there's I joke about it, but there's no trucking for dummies out there. There's not one of them books, and unfortunately, I know myself, it's a tough business, and I was fortunate enough to be around some guys that were successful to help me. But I still did a lot of stupid and dumb things. It was a while before I was making any kind of money. It just felt like for a while in the beginning. And hopefully, if you come and take this course, that you get saved from some of that. And it's it costs around $500, and you got to come out here for 3 days. But what I tell people is, it sounds like a lot of commitment, but you're getting ready to go out here and invest in a business, and you may be paying more money out than what your house costs. It's the biggest investment of your life could be. And so, spending $500 plus a week in Kansas City is really nothing to make. And you can write that off, but it's really nothing in the big grand scheme of things. And if you fail, and I was just going to say, we have people who come out and do this, and then they're like, I don't even want to go to be an owner operator, which that's a win too.
Right.
They don't fail.
Exactly.
And some of that information can be found on the OOIDA Foundation website. They have various educational classes.
And we've already had Truck for Success for 2021, but we will be meeting here soon and getting ready to schedule 2022 Truck to Success.
Awesome. Jennifer, Gary, Lewie, thank you much for being with us this evening. We're going to be back again in 2 weeks. We'll give you more information on guests and all that stuff as soon as we get it, probably first thing next week. So hope you enjoyed the show. And again, and want to thank Angel Burnell, our lovely chief of staff, for spending the evening with us. I'm going to try to get her on as a guest, maybe in 2022. So stay tuned. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for joining us today. Live from Exit 24 was brought to you by the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association and our technical crew, Barry Spillman, Nate Kelly, and Jim Fetzer. If you aren't a member yet, call our main number during business hours to join, and that number is 816-229-5791, or you can just go to our website at ooida.com.